Hey everybody, Tyler Smith here with More Than One Lesson and Battleship Pretension. So I wanted to briefly talk about something that has been sort of bothering me a little bit lately. So there's a quote that I saw posted on Facebook recently, by whom I won't say, but it is a quote by Teddy Roosevelt, and it goes as follows. It is not the critic who counts, not the man who points out how the strong man stumbles or where the doer of deeds could have done them better. The credit belongs to the man who is actually in the arena, whose face is marred by dust and sweat and blood, who strives valiantly, who errs, who comes short again and again. But there is no effort without error and shortcoming. But who does actually strive to do the deeds, who knows great enthusiasms, the great devotions, who spends himself in a worthy cause, who at the best knows in the end the triumph of high achievement, and who at the worst, if he fails, at least fails while daring greatly, so that his place shall never be with those cold and timid souls who neither know victory nor defeat. All right. I'm sure people have seen this before. It is a great cultural legacy of Teddy Roosevelt's that quote gets shared around. But if you're a critic, you are very familiar with this because people will often post it on IMDb, on Facebook, link to it on Twitter, and that sort of thing, because they want to remind you that you are not valuable, that you sit on the sidelines, that you risk nothing, and that sort of thing. So I wanted to talk about that just very briefly because I find that a lot of people, and certainly the person that posted this on Facebook that has sort of prompted this video, I found that people will post this as a way of insulating themselves from any criticism, including constructive criticism. And if you actually look at the quote, I mean, what are we talking about? We're talking about somebody who is, whose face is marred with dust and sweat and blood and all this. This is a character. Character doesn't sound right, but this is, the character of the man in the arena is somebody who's working hard. The word effort shows up a couple of times on here, and and when I look at this quote, I don't see it as a takedown of critics. I see it as the idea of working your hardest, knowing that you might fall short, but then what does falling short even mean if you are in fact working your hardest? It's like that idea of, it doesn't matter who wins or loses, it's how you play the game. So that's I think what the quote is, and that there will always be people on the sidelines judging what you do. And so I think that's what the quote means, and I respect it. I'm on board with it. But I think a lot of people use it to mean that anytime somebody who's not in the arena, who comments about what's happening in the arena, that they're not risking anything, that their voice doesn't matter. And I can see what they're saying, and I kind of agree to a certain extent. I think we critics can be very prickly sometimes, but then very openly mock movies and books and that sort of thing, and maybe are a little bit too a little bit too flippant with our mocking and our criticism. So that is on us. But I will say that that the idea behind this quote and these concepts is that the person in the arena is working as hard as they can, and that yes, they will fall, but they are still putting forth maximum effort. And if that's what they're doing, then somebody can point out, hey, you could have done this better, you could have done that better, and maybe that person can say, okay, got it, I can try to improve, but for today, this was the best I could do. As opposed to somebody in the arena who shows up having not trained, having not exercised, or doing any of that, who shows up, fails, and then someone says, hey, it looks like you really could have put a little bit more effort into it, and then that person says, what do you know? You're not in here. And then the response is, yes, and you shouldn't be. You have no right being in there. And so it's a thing that I was talking with somebody about it recently, and it's I viewed it in terms of like running, like competitive running, and the idea that you can run as fast as you can and still come in second, third, fourth. You could come in dead last, But if you're literally running as fast as you can, then nobody can blame you. And then in that case, if somebody makes fun of you and says, oh, you came in this, you came in that, you can say, hey, I did my best, and who are you? You know, I think at that point you can be a little bit defensive, and you can be a bit, maybe even dismissive of the critic's voice. But that's the person running as hard as they can. Then there are the people, in the analogy, there are the people who show up and they haven't trained, they're not great runners, and they haven't tried to be great runners, but they decide, I want to do this. I mean, it's just running. How hard could it be? They show up in the arena, and then they jog at a very leisurely pace because they're like, oh my gosh, do you see how hard it is to run at full speed for the whole race? Are you kidding me? And then they come in dead last, and then someone says, hey, maybe you could have picked up the pace, and then that person gets defensive. You know, it's one thing, just showing up in the arena is not actually enough to deflect criticism. You do have to put in the maximum amount of effort. And obviously we all have days when we don't. We all have days when we purposely decide, okay, I'm going to operate at about 75% capacity today because I don't have the energy. And, you know, I can understand that, but I will say that when you are in the arena and all eyes are on you, there's a tremendous pressure, but if you're there, it's because you feel like, I deserve to be here. I have worked to be here. And maybe other people worked harder, or maybe they are just capable of more, and you wind up losing. But there's no blame in that situation. But if you show up and you have not done any, and you've not prepared at all, and then you lose, then I think any criticism is valid. And I would venture to say that to the people that post this quote as a way of circling the wagons and deflecting any kind of criticism, even legitimate criticism, I would venture to say Teddy Roosevelt would have said, hey, can you please not use my words to defend your crappy product? So I just wanted to say that because it's a thing that I, over the years, have become very familiar with, this quote, and it's something that I wanted to talk about, because while the sentiments of the quote are things that I do agree with, I think it's very easy to simply look at the first phrase, which is, it's not the critic who counts. And what's interesting, a lot of people, when they post this, they will give it a sort of a de facto title, which is the critic. Now, it's actually from a speech called "The Man in the Arena." And I would say, if you are in that situation, if you are the man in the arena, then it's best to focus on what you are supposed to be doing, not what other people think of you. And then if you're a critic, it's also important to look at the man in the arena and see all that he is doing and that I am not doing. So I think this is an important quote when looked at in the proper context and looked at in the correct tone. So I just wanted to say that you can let me know what you think. I'm sure a lot of people will disagree, and I welcome that disagreement. You know, I'm putting myself in a very low level, in a very low stakes situation. I'm putting myself in the arena right now, and so you're welcome to chime in and let me know what you think. Thank you very much. Take it easy.